Hey guys, Izzy here, back with another video, and today I wanted to give the final follow-up to this topic that I've been talking about for the last two Let's Talk About videos, and it's basically talking about boss fights, pretty much, right? So, I've already talked about the worst designs in Warframe in terms of boss fights, and I've also talked about the placeholder boss fights in the game currently. And I guess I couldn't really go without mentioning the best or favorites at the very least boss fights in Warframe in my opinion. Now, I of course do want to let you guys know that this is going to be very heavily opinionated, so it's going to be my personal favorite boss fights in the game. If you of course disagree, hey, feel free to disagree with me. Let me know in the comments which are your favorite boss fights in the game. And if you want, let me know why those are your favorites. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on this. But just wanted to give this topic a little bit of closure since I've already talked about pretty much everything other than the best boss fights. And of course, Warframe has some really good boss fights in it, so yeah, let's go ahead and start off. I do want to let you also guys know that I'm not gonna say these in any particular order per se. Like I'm not gonna say that this is the number one boss fight, but the first one that I will be mentioning is definitely my top favorite battle in the game, and it's actually going to be the Glassmaker itself, Nihil. I think that's how you pronounce its name. Honestly, I'm not sure, but basically this boss fight is my favorite. It's just such a enjoyable boss fight in general, not just because of its mechanics, but also the build up towards it. I was of course fortunate enough to play the Glassmaker Nightwave missions, and it was quite enjoyable to get these sort of lore bits of, you know, kind of like who the Glassmaker is and stuff like that. And the build up toward the boss fight was honestly really cool. You get a really cool ornament as well. Right now you're still able to get these where you actually have the Glassmaker captured. And just in general, the design of this boss fight is just so cool. Not just because of the boss fight itself, but also the boss itself. Nihil looks like an extremely good, like well-designed Orokin boss fight, which also in general I believe is the only Orokin boss fight that we've had, barring maybe of course Ballas in the Sacrifice quest and also in the New War. So it was a really cool boss fight, and I absolutely enjoyed playing it. And just the design itself just really makes me wish that we would be able to change the color tone of our operators or drifters to that of the Orokin, because honestly, just the designs of them itself are really cool. And yeah, unfortunately it's a glitch and we can't really actually do it, so it is what it is, I guess. I understand the lore behind it, so whatever. But anyways, let's jump right into the next one, which is also one of my top favorite boss fights in the game, and that's the Ropalolyst. The Ropalolyst, not only design wise, is probably one of my favorite sentient like like boss fights in the game, but also in general, like the boss fight itself is so fucking cool. Like we have dynamic stage damage basically every time we go through a phase. The phases in and of itself are all just the same, pretty much rinse and repeat. Get the thing to charge the lamp, get it to ram the lamp, and then hit the shit on its back, and you know, it's pretty straightforward. It's nothing too crazy, but at the very least it does have some mechanics towards it where it's not just a shoot me and kill me type of assassination target, and it makes it so that it's at least interesting to go through while you're farming that wisp. Now, it's not just of course the boss fight that I like and the design, it's also just like the lore behind the Ropalolyst throughout the time that you are trying to get to the Ropalolyst, which is kind of a little bit annoying as well when you're replaying this boss fight. But in general, I still really enjoyed the lore bits that are given to you throughout the time that you're getting to the Ropalolyst. So that's honestly something that's a plus to me. I love the lore of this game a lot, so when it's giving you those hints and those things before the big event is something, you know, that I always just pretty much enjoy. So the boss fight was the boss design itself was great. Boss fight in general was really enjoyable, and it has this last climactic like finish where you actually end up destroying the whole platform, and the scenery pretty much after defeating the Ropalolyst, where you're still needing to get to the extraction point, but the whole like place is absolutely devastated after that boss fight, and it's just a really nice scenery because everything still continues to get destroyed as you get to the extraction point. And I don't know, for me that's just a plus. It's just a really cool thing to see, honestly. But yeah, anyways, moving on to the next boss fight, and this one is a lot more simpler. It is the Jackal. The Jackal is of course a very new player boss fight, pretty much. You get to fight it very early on in the game. Now it did recently, or kind of recently I guess, did get a rework where it is a lot more interesting than it was usually. Like pretty much before, you would just walk into the room, shoot it in the leg, and just fucking one-shot it. That was pretty much the boss fight in its entirety. Now it's a lot more different. It has faces, which is great, and it has some really cool uses of the Parasol, I guess it's how it's called. And it has a very interesting phase where once you of course shoot out its leg, it goes into this kind of fetal position, I guess you could say. I'm not entirely sure what you call that position it goes on, and it just floats up in the air and creates this X-like wall figure where whenever it's red, it does damage, whenever it's blue, it doesn't do damage, and it just rotates throughout the whole like arena. And it has some pillars that you're able to hide behind, but they do get destroyed, so you're inevitably going to have to either sprint away from the walls when they're moving or try to jump over them. Now obviously there are cheeses to this boss fight. You're able to go like as Titania or shit like that. It's not a really hard boss fight at all, but it's a very enjoyable one, and it's a good example of a boss fight that was an absolute joke and can now actually be like a quite interesting or entertaining boss fight with some nice mechanics that aren't actually used in other boss fights. So it's very nice to see that the Jackal got a little bit of love, and hoping to see that continue on for other boss fights that are pretty much still kind of a joke to this day. Anyways, up to the next boss fight, it's pretty much the upgraded version of the Jackal, and that's the Razorback. Razorback is a boss fight that you only get to fight once, of course, the invasion meter goes up for it. And I think it's a very interesting boss fight because it has a mechanic that doesn't really get used in any other boss fight in the game. Pretty much when you get to fight the Razorback, you have to be 2 Bursas and hack them in order to actually do damage to the Razorback. Now, it's been a while since I've actually done this boss fight, so I could be a little bit wrong. Let me know in the comments if I am. But once you do that, it's when you're able to actually do damage to it. And I've always really liked this boss fight because not only is this a big motherfucker, like we're talking about a big ass motherfucker, like a lot bulkier than the regular Jackal. It's a boss fight that, like I said, uses a mechanic that isn't really extremely unique in terms of like how it works. You've seen it in other games probably, but in Warframe it's not something that we're commonly used to having. Like it's not exactly like the ambulance boss fight, and the invulnerable phase that it has depends on the player doing something in order to remove it. So it's that type of invulnerable phase that isn't quite bad, pretty much. And I just like the design of the Razorback. It just looks really bulky, huge motherfucker. It's actually quite threatening. So yeah, I just really like this boss fight. It's not a boss fight that I was thinking of actually adding when I was thinking about boss fights in general, but it came to mind and I honestly like it. It's a very well made one per se. Now the next one is kind of a spoiler. If you haven't played the new war, I'm sorry. You can skip ahead a bit, I guess, if you don't want to get spoiled. But it is the Ballas boss fight when you get to fight him in the new war. Now, generally, I didn't feel too crazy about this boss fight, but it was a boss fight that I did enjoy at the very least fighting against. And I could probably say the same thing about the Archons when you were fighting against them as the Drifter. But I didn't actually enjoy them too much, actually. I enjoyed the boss fight against Ballas, though. But it was a little bit more confusing since not a lot of the mechanics were very clear, I guess you could say. Now that I know how the boss fight works, it does feel like a very well-made boss fight. Barring, of course, a couple of things that were a little bit rough to kind of get through. I like Ballas. Like, this design for Ballas in the new war was actually super cool, because it just makes him look like an absolute fucking villain, like an evil ass motherfucker, and just look threatening. It's what the Orokin are. They're fucking assholes, and he is just the epitome of a fucking Orokin asshole, and I like it. I just love this boss fight, honestly. I can't really say that I didn't like it, because it was just pretty cool, honestly. And now, as for the last boss fight, I actually wanted to go ahead and include this one because it's essentially the only boss fight that we have as an Archwing, and I absolutely love Archwing as a mechanic in Warframe, so I just find enjoyment in this boss fight, honestly. It's a big motherfucker, and you get to fight it as an Archwing, like, that's a plus for me. It's, of course, the Jorda's Golem. Now, there was a completely different version for this assassination target, which was in the Jorda's Verdict, DV raid, where it was a lot more complicated and was infested with riddles, puzzles, and just in general a lot more mechanics in the regular boss fight itself. I still find a lot of enjoyment in the regular one. I unfortunately lost footage from the Jorda's Verdict raid that I used to do with my clanmates, so I'm unfortunately not able to actually show you guys how complicated the boss fight was. But what I will say is it was quite enjoyable to actually figure it out with my clanmates. And yeah, but we're not talking about that one in particular. We're talking about the regular Jorda's Golem, which is a lot more straightforward than the JV counterpart. And I honestly like it, honestly. It's a big boss fight with a pretty big HP bar. And it's pretty simple, right? You just have to shoot it in the back before you actually get to it. You fight against pretty much a behemoth juggernaut, I think it's what it's called, or juggernaut behemoth, I'm not sure. But essentially, this boss fight is like a big psych. You actually think this is the boss fight that you're going to fight. Well, you're in for a shocker, because you're gonna have to fight a much bigger beast and an Archwing. Like, most of the people that actually did this boss fight for the first time probably didn't even have like good equipment to fight against it, so it was probably a lot harder to, you know, get through on your first try, because, you know, most of us didn't actually farm for I guess a good Archwing weapon. So quite the challenging boss fight as a newer player. But again, I just enjoy this boss fight mainly because it's the only assassination target that you actually get to fight in your Archwing, and design wise I honestly like it. It's a big chunk of, like, I think it's a jet, I'm not sure, with a lot of infestation on it, and that's pretty much the boss fight. It's really cool, and I wish that we had more boss fights like these, because basically these types of boss fights, I would definitely like to have them. Honestly, it's They're really cool. They're really cool to me. But yeah, that's gonna be it for all the pretty much like the boss fights that I liked. I know it's pretty like it's not exactly a tier list or anything like that, but maybe a tier list in the future would be nice. But I just wanted to go ahead and give this topic a little bit of closure because I've already talked about, you know, in 2 videos covering like placeholder boss fights, terrible designs in Warframe, and I don't want to have these videos just be complaining at all because I don't believe that's what my series of Let's Talk is. So I wanted to give, of course, a little bit of praise to Digital Extremes in Warframe of at least coming up with some really cool boss fights. And again, these are my like opinions on the boss fights themselves. I didn't include other things like Eidolons or Mother Orbs because those are kind of a little bit different. But if I were to have to say one of those boss fights, I would say that the Explorer Orb to some extent is a very fun boss fight. Unfortunately, it's hindered extremely heavily by the fact that its final phase is the biggest pain in the ass, so I don't even want to go ahead and dive into that because it is literally what's wrong with a lot of the designs in Warframe when they have in-world phases. But anyways, that's gonna be it for today. Let me know what you guys thinking about the boss fights in Warframe. What are your favorite ones? Let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on this. I do, of course, want to apologize for the, you know, lack of content this last week. I've been taking a little bit of a break, not because I'm, you know, burnt out or anything. It's just that work has been very hectic these last couple of days, so I just wanted to go ahead and give it a little bit of, you know, a little bit of breathing room before I started making more videos. But yeah, anyway guys, I'll see you on the next one. Please leave a like and subscribe if you guys want to see more content like this. And yeah, see you guys. Peace.